And
what is going on? Greg, how are you? What's up, man?
I always dance when I hear that intro. I love that intro.
Hey, I don't know if we want to see you dance, buddy? Greg.
What do we got tonight?
We got Matthew Schauf. He's on today. There he is. What's up, Matthew Schauf from
Hey guys, thanks for having me on.
What's going on, man?
I don't know. I feel like maybe I should have had an espresso before I came on. A lot of energy right out of the gate.
Oh, dude,
I love that intro. I do. Hey, Tip, what are we talking about?
So we're talking a little bit about the Fantasy Expo, but after that, we're going to be getting really into the sleeper category. We're going to be talking about sleepers. Each one of us has their own sleeper, and I think Matt has an extra sleeper because he deals with IDP. Is that correct, Matt?
That is absolutely correct.
So we're going to be talking.
Each of us has 3 sleepers.
We do. Yeah, we got 3 sleepers, and we're going to take turns doing it. But before that, we want to give the floor to you, Matt. And then we'll talk a little bit about the Fantasy Football Expo. Talk to us. Tell us a little bit about what you do at Draft Sharks.
Well, as you said, I'm Matt Schauf from draftsharks.com. I'm officially the editor there, but we all have a hand in content. I host the podcast. We cover lots of different areas, lots of different formats. As you mentioned, IDP is a particular specialty of mine, but I think we kind of pride ourselves on being able to cover all the formats because there are more and more of them each year at this point. Plenty of articles available, plenty of fantasy football tools ready to help people with their draft, with free agents, with trades and all that. And, it's a fun company to work for. We're not enormous, so everybody has a hand in everything and everybody really cares about every area of the product.
So, Matt, you and I go kind of way back. You're an old timer. Where did we first meet? Who were you with when we first started following each other?
I think that I was with Jeff Thomas at that point with the company. It started as Sports Buff, but evolved into other things. And then I might have even been in the transition from there to Draft Sharks, which happened within about a year at that point.
Yeah, it was I'm old. Was Draft Sharks Lenny Papano's thing?
Sure is. Still is Lenny Papano's thing, actually.
Okay, so now I know where it's at. Tip doesn't know Lenny, but Lenny put together this site, and he, like Joe Bryant with Football Guys, he surrounded himself with really good people. And Draft Sharks is one of those sites. When I came back, I was amazed that I couldn't find guys like Tony Holm and Lenny Papano because, like me, they had decided to step back from the I mean, we were all just writers at one time. We all just loved the hobby. And then we each kind of did other things for a while. So how was it like working for Lenny? Because this guy's got a lot of energy. Lenny does.
Oh, it's great. And I don't know many better people than Lenny. He cares about everybody so much. He wants to make sure that everything's going well for you, takes care of all of us. And, like you said, he has stepped back a bit from the writing because it's a grind. So you do it for so long and then you're like, all right, I'm going to try to enjoy the fall a little bit for a while. So he turns it over to us. We got a little bit more youth and more of us doing the job at this point. So certainly helps push things along in that front.
It does. Now, Tip mentioned the expo, and I just got off a RotoWire with Jim Coventry. He's doing a podathon over there. And my topic was the expo. Tip got to go to his very first expo. Have you been to one of the expos in Canton?
I haven't yet. It's tough timing for us because August is such an important work month for Draft Sharks in particular, and for most of the industry.
We did our show from there. Well, I did. Tip stayed home and came a day late. But I tell you, you got to go. The networking capability is amazing. It really is. But Tip, what was your favorite takeaway from the expo?
How much time do you have, Greg? I mean, like,
well, I can tell you mine.
Okay, tell me yours because I can't pick just one.
Mine was Friday night. Okay, yeah. Tip comes in. I'm an early bird. I'm in bed by 10:30. I'm out. Tip comes in at 1:38. I looked at the clock. 1:38. 1:41. He is snoring. I swear to God, 3 minutes, he's gone. Now, I did the Kings Classic draft where I drafted against the best of the best. That's why you got to go, Matt. You got to get in there and get into the Kings Classic. They do have an IDP division that you would fit in perfectly. And I also got to auction against guys like Bob Harris and JJ Zacharias and Matt Harmon and Jeff Ratcliffe. And oh God, it just goes on. 14 team league. So that was really good. But seeing how fast that man can go to sleep, I like.
Hey, what's more important in fantasy than efficiency, right? Sounds perfect.
Yeah, that's right. And for me, the whole camaraderie, just the whole community coming together, it was one big celebration, and it's perfect for, like you just said, Matt. This is the beginning of the season. Yeah, and a lot of us were still working while we were out there. This was actually like work, but it was fun work, you know. So the thing is, it was a celebration. It was like, hey, the season's about to start. Let's unwind for a little bit and then get to the grind. Because as you know, Matt and Greg, the fantasy football community, the industry in itself has become a year-long thing with Dynasty, with all of the other different games.
There ain't no off season, baby. There ain't no off
season. And then even generations, and we'll talk a little bit about more of them later. That was one of our guys that we went out there and helped. But man, it's something that could be done year round. But you know what, Greg? I'm ready to get into some sleepers.
Okay.
I had enough sleep when I was in Canton, Ohio, going to bed in 3 minutes. I'm good. I got my rest. I'm good to go. So we wanted to talk to you guys about sleepers. And what is a sleeper? So a sleeper to me, and it could be different for most people or more people, but for me, it's a player that you get after round 10. And a player that you get after that round that returns on the value, or that you think that will return on the value at a much higher value or a much higher round. So there are a ton of times where people will draft somebody thinking that they're going to be a sleeper, or maybe you can get them off the waiver wire like I did with Lamar Jackson in 2019, and he won the league for me. So it's just one of those things that I always like to talk about. Everybody talks about them, but they are important because you don't win your draft at the beginning of the draft in the first 3 to 4 rounds. You don't win it. You start winning it in the middle of the round. So round 6 all the way down to round, after round 10. So those are where the sweet spots can be for your team. So with that being said, I wanted to talk to Matt and see who his first person is that he wanted to talk about as far as a sleeper.
I'm going to start with Bucky Irving because I've been talking about him, liking him since before he actually got drafted. We had a little hiccup when he didn't have a great scouting combine, but he still landed in a good spot in the draft in Tampa Bay. And that's really what I like most about him as a sleeper, because in the range where Bucky Irving's going, which is, around 14, 15, maybe even later in some leagues, you're usually looking at guys that need to have a starter go down to get an opportunity. I think there's a chance that Bucky Irving challenges Rachaad White for carries this year, because Rachaad White has been a very inefficient runner through his 2 seasons. He was very productive last year. He was actually our breakout player pick at DraftSharks.com last year, certainly paid off. But even in that, he was 44th in Pro Football Focus rushing grade, 42nd in yards after contact per carry, 46th in rush yards over expected per carry. So that shows you he put together the totals, but he wasn't an efficient performer. So they bring in Bucky Irving, who was a very efficient runner at Oregon. He's small, but he broke tackles and picked up yards after contact more than what you would expect from a little guy. And Todd Bowles has already spoken of how impressed he is with the way that Bucky Irving hits the line, gets through the line, creates yards after the line. So I think there's a chance that he steals some work from Rachaad White. And then, of course, if Rachaad White goes down, I think Bucky Irving is well positioned to take over the backfield and give us big numbers.
Okay, that's exciting. I went running back with my first one too, Tip.
Okay.
But I went with a Michigan guy, naturally. I went with Blake Corum. Now, everybody says, hey, Blake Corum is, he's behind Kyron Williams, and Kyron Williams is really good. Well, Blake Corum was drafted at 120, so that's right on the edge of what we define a sleeper as, okay? He's 5'8", he's 210 pounds. His 40 was 4.53. He's not spectacular. There are faster guys. His 3-cone was 6.82. That was pretty good. His 20-yard shuttle was 4.12. To be honest. He's bigger by 16 pounds than Kyron Williams. He's faster by 12 100ths of a second, 0.12 seconds. He's a lot quicker in three cone. I think the three cone was 682, and for Kyron it was 707. So I had to dig to find that one because he didn't run it at the combine, but it was on the Rams site. So bigger, faster, stronger, quicker. He's one of the strongest running backs in the league. I mean, the guy can deadlift 600 pounds. Okay. He did 27 reps of 225, which is offensive lineman strength. The thing he did at Michigan was he moved piles despite his small size, his relatively small size. So I think they split, and I think because Kyron Williams was injury prone last year, he missed 5 games. I think Wes Snead basically said, "Let me read it to you." It's a tough league. It's a 17-game season plus playoffs. Might go to 18 games one day, Snead said. So we always felt like we needed to have as many quality runners as possible so we don't just totally run down Kyron. Now, understand, Kyron was a 5th-round pick. Blake was a 3rd-round pick. I figure it's a 60-40 split favoring Kyron to begin with, but I think by the end of the year, and if Kyron goes down, I think Blake Corum takes that job entirely. And as a sleeper pick, you can get him as your RB4, and he may end up being your RB2 by the end of the year. Who you got, Tip?
You know what, Greg? I just want to highlight a couple of things that you and Matt said real quick for both of those. I really like the call on Irving. This Tampa Bay offense should be a little bit better. As far offensive line should be a little bit better. So I do like that call. And Greg, look, you ain't gotta sell me, bro. Like, I like Blake Corum a lot, and he looks a lot like MJD.
Tell him what I had you do at the expo. YouTube Indiana, Michigan highlights.
He sure did. And I was like, I looked at it, I was like, wow, that looks a lot like Maurice Jones-Drew running out there. Little cuts and then those little funny legs just running really fast. And I was just like, wow. But as far as
five people had him surrounded and nobody touched him. So
I know it was crazy. So for me, I picked the running back as well, guys. So it's weird that we were all on the same link as that. And my running back is Eric Gray. Look, Tyrone Tracy just injured himself, his right leg. I know that they said it was a lot. They thought it was a lot worse than what it actually came out to be. That's great. But it's still a leg injury. It's still something that we don't necessarily exactly know what's going on. But I just researched and said leg injury. This last preseason game, he had 2 touchdowns. I mean, that speaks to me. But on that 48-yard touchdown, it really spoke to me because he made a really nice cut, an inland cut, and went to the house with that speed. And it was a beautiful run. And then the second run, and the second touchdown came at a 1-yard line. So it tells me there that he might get some goal line carries because we know Devin Singletary. He's not the biggest of running backs. He can run in between the tackles, but he's not the biggest. Eric Gray does have that profile to be a bigger back that could run. The offense does scare me a little bit, but I do feel like that they've made a couple of moves to the offensive line, especially my guy Illuminor from the Raiders, and then they also got the guard from the Packers, Runyon is, and so they got him, and that's going to help that line out a lot. And it looks like that line is going to be creating some holes for that offense. Right now, you're getting him at 271, guys. I mean, this is one of those players, if you're in a 12-team league, 14-team league, you still got an opportunity to get him off the waiver wire. But why not just take that, last pick of yours, as long as you got your defense and your kicker, and just utilize it and use it on him. If he waits to the waiver wire, then you got to wait for priorities and all of that stuff. And what if he goes off the first Sunday of the week, and now you're trying to figure out what you want to do to have a high pro, or at least a RB1 type of guy possible. So that's the thing. So I really like Eric Gray. I think that he has an opportunity to take some touches away from both of the other 2 guys. I really like what he brings to the table for them, and I like his speed and his agility that he runs as well. So that's my guy, Eric Gray. Now, what do you have to say, Greg? I know you got something to say.
Oh no, I'm writing him down so that I can remember him because I didn't even consider him. I was considering Tracy, but let's step this back. Come on, Matt. Who's your number 2 guy?
I got another running back up next, and it's Tank Bigsby, and it's as much about the player as it is the player type. First of all, I liked him as a prospect coming in. Jacksonville talked him up last year in camp. He ended up having a terrible rookie season, and that has a lot of people just rating him off this year. I think it's important to remember that the whole thing behind running backs don't matter, the concept of running backs don't matter, is that it really doesn't matter a lot of times how good the actual player is. It's about his opportunity. And that's what Bigsby still has. They've continued to talk him up in this camp. Doug Peterson talked him up in the offseason, saying he thinks he'll be further along this year. He likes how he has taken on the offseason, thinks he knows the offense better. It doesn't sound like they don't think he's good enough. It's just that he, for whatever reason, wasn't ready last year. So all we need is the coaching staff to believe in the player to give him more opportunities this year. And he's still a Travis Etienne injury away from leading the backfield in what should be a good offense. And now you can take Tank Bigsby in the range of RB 60 to 65, as opposed to last year. He was about RB 40, 41 in ADP by the time we got to August. So much lower investment, where if he does still stink, if he's just not good enough, then you haven't really lost anything at that point. And if he just shrugs off a bad rookie season, and if ETN goes down, then all of a sudden you've got this guy at the rest of your leagues like, how did I miss him? And you can say, because I'm smarter than you guys.
That's always a good take, in my opinion. Also, I love coming on shows like this and telling people what I'm thinking, because it's more fun to beat them when they know what you're thinking than when they're just guessing. I'm the first one to get off the running back bandwagon, though. I'm going with the wide receiver, and my ADP is 133. My wide receiver, I believe, is the brand new number 1 wide receiver in the upper New York City of Buffalo. I love me some Curtis Samuel. He looked pretty good in the opening preseason game, but what I love is the opportunity. All right. The last 2 years, Curtis Samuel, I had to write this down, 183 targets over 2 years, 91, 92. And basically, the number 1 wide receiver over the last 4 years in Buffalo, yes, it's Stephon Diggs, I know that, but he's averaged 167 targets by himself. Now, do I think that right away Curtis Samuel is going to get 167 targets? It's within the realm of possibility, but probably closer to 150 if he's the number 1 wide receiver, which I think he will be. I know Dalton Kincaid's going to get a bump up, but I don't think they take a tight end and give him Evan Ingram style looks. So I think if Kincaid gets 120, you still got 160 for Samuel. I'm not that worried about Khalil Shakir, to be honest. But what I'm looking at over the 2 years that we have from Curtis Samuel, 126 for 1269, 8 touchdowns, another 226 rushing and 3 touchdowns. Now that's over 2 years. I understand that, but that's with way lesser quarterbacks and overall offensive play. So I'm looking at Curtis Samuel as someone I want to get, and I'm predicting that he'll get about 115 receptions for 1,200 yards and actually more touchdowns, 9 touchdowns, because that offense is just that much better. Tip, I know you got another guy.
I do have another guy, and it's a wide receiver. So I'm kind of going behind your coattails there on the wide receiver, and it's Jerry Jeudy. I know he is dealing with a little bit of injury. He missed the first game in preseason, but I think it may have been a precautionary thing. We'll have to keep an eye on him, that's for sure. But at his ADP of 136, this guy could potentially be like your number 5, number 6 wide receiver on your team, depending on how deep you went. If you started heavy on wide receivers or not. But at that draft position, I really like his value. I like that the Browns went out and pursued him. They went out there and wanted to get him. And then when they went out and pursued him, they paid him immediately. And then not only that, Deshaun Watson has a chance to probably, maybe, hopefully resurrect, because I always root for Deshaun. on the field. I hope maybe he can resurrect his career. And if he does resurrect his career, Jerry Jeudy is a perfect complement to Amari Cooper, to Elijah Moore, to a David Njoku, to a really good offensive line that I think that he can make some noise in on the Browns. Now, the issue has always been with him is injury. He knows how to play the ball, play the game. He runs really great routes. I think that he gets it figured out in Cleveland this year. And like I said, as of number 5, number 6 wide receiver, a fill-in for your bye weeks, that is the one that I would really look at getting on my team, especially if I'm really heavy on wide receivers or have a good wide receiver squad. So I think that another thing that I'm noticing through training camp with Jerry Jeudy is that he's working on his chemistry with Deshaun Watson, and they've been actually connecting on a lot of passes. They connected on a really deep touchdown connection just the other day. So that's something that they are forming, and I think that Deshaun Watson can take care of 2 wide receivers. So I'm really high on him.
Okay, so we're going to take a quick break for our sponsor. Brand new TSA affiliate sponsor is drafters.com. And guys, we have an ad for Drafters queued up.
Here we go.
Drafters got a brand new $5 draft that I'm interested in too. They've got $2 drafts. They've got $15 drafts, give you a $500,000 top prize. And I happened to meet a guy that finished 7th last year. And I asked him, and he was kind enough to tell me 7th place last year in the Drafters $15 draft, $35,000 prize. So it's definitely worth the money. Now, I've got to ask you something before we go back to our sleepers, Matt. When we were at the expo, we met some guys from New York that put together an app called Generations. And I'm not getting paid for this. This is not a paid advertisement, but I just love their product. And we're in I didn't even look to see how I'm doing in the playoffs, but we're in a 8-man league that we drafted Wednesday before the expo, and then every day they play. But Matt, who's your favorite all-time NFL player, offense or defense?
My all-time favorite NFL player is former Eagle safety Brian Dawkins, who I started watching at Clemson when I lived there, and he was a stud there. And then he got drafted by the Eagles. And then my family moved to Philadelphia, I guess just because, the fates knew that we needed to follow Brian Dawkins through his career. I didn't follow him to his other teams at the end of his career, but that was plenty for me. I don't think there was a more fun defensive player to watch.
Okay, so what Generations does, and it's an app, Generations Fantasy Sports. You can download it on your phone, and then you can play for free. My lineup, okay, no IDP yet, but they're putting it in next February, they tell me. February of 2025, you'll be able to draft Brian Dawkins. And he's retired. How can you do that? My lineup is Dan Marino, Derrick Henry, modern player, O.J. Simpson, Randy Moss, Jerry Rice, and Travis Kelce. And Tip, do you want to tell them how you did in this league? Or should we just pass on that?
I think we should just pass on this.
All right, we'll pass on that. But you can they use random games from the player's history where all he has to do is take a snap. And I got a 0-point game from Randy Moss. It happens. So I think he had 2 targets, 2 targets. I don't remember. I think he had 2 yards or something, but he lost points. So I ended up with 0 points from Randy Moss in one of my games. It's just fun. And you can play a game a day, which is the way our league's set up. And you can play massive leagues. You can have a 32-team league. So just go to your Play Store, download Generations, and try it. So let's get back to sleepers, though. We want to talk about what's going to help us this year. And Matt, I know you've got a third guy, right?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna go to tight end here, and it's not every league where a sleeper tight end's gonna help you, but I think this guy is somebody that you can stash as a tight end too, who has a real shot to climb into the top 12 this year. And I think every year, guys, there's at least a tight end or two that start low, tight end 18, tight end 20 in ADP, and wind up among the top 12, top 10, deliver numbers that you were not expecting. To me, Tyler Conklin is a strong candidate to do that this year. He was actually better than you probably think he was last year. He finished tight end 18 in PPR points, but that's because he had 0 touchdowns on a team with garbage quarterbacks. He finished 13th at the position in targets, 11th in catches, 13th in yards, 18th in yards per route because his quarterback stunk. So this is a guy that's been among the top 3 Jets in targets each of the past 2 years. He finally gets a quarterback upgrade after dealing with Zach Wilson, 3 games of Joe Flacco, Mike White, the other turds that the Jets had to throw out there over the past 2 years after Aaron Rodgers' injury. If Tyler Conklin gets that same kind of usage, gets the 13th most targets among tight ends this year, that guy's going to finish among the top 11 fantasy scorers at the position. I would bet on it because now he gets a quarterback that's one of the best all time at throwing touchdowns on a team that doesn't have a whole lot of proven touchdown scorers. Garrett Wilson's the easy number 1 receiver, but when it gets down to the red zone, Tyler Conklin's going to be an attractive target for Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, I love that call because I take tight ends early because if you don't get a top 5 guy, it's a difference maker in your roster. People don't realize it's not how many points they score, it's the point differential. If you don't take this guy and you take this guy, how many points do you lose or gain? And that's getting a tight end that can finish top 5 late in your draft. That's a winning strategy. It really is. And so I was remiss. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Sports Affiliation, and like and subscribe to these videos because we're trying to do something special here. My number 3 guy, I'm going back to the running back well, and I'm going back to the rookie well. I like rookie running backs this year. I think there's several really good ones in good situations. Now, I don't think Blake Corum is in the best situation because Kyron Williams had a really good year. But Jalen Wright, again, you're talking about a rookie in a crowded backfield. You've got Devon Achane, you've got Raheem Mostert. Well, let's look at those guys. Achane's 188 pounds, an injury waiting to happen. He got injured last year. Look at his numbers after the injury. You're going to find out they weren't very good. He did have 2 top 12 games after the injury, but he also had 2 games that were outside the top 24, and he had 2 games that were just pitiful. So, he's a small guy. He's young. He's fast. I give him that. Raheem Mostert's 32 years old. We've all heard about the 30-year-old wall for running backs. Now, he bypassed it. Raheem Mostert had 21 touchdowns last year, 18 rushing. Okay? There's no way he does that again. That is true regression material. So if you're expecting him, and he missed a couple games too. So what I like about Jalen Wright, 5'10", 210 pounds. 22 pounds heavier than Achane. So he's actually the same size as Mostert, who got 18 rushing touchdowns in that offense. Okay? He runs a 4.38 40. That is not that much slower, maybe not even a half a second slower than Achane, who's one of the fastest backs in the league. 3-cone deal and the 20-yard he did not do. So we don't know about his agility, but he did score a touchdown already in the preseason. So watch him close in the preseason. I think he's an injury away from being a low-end RB1 and a high-end RB2 on a per-week basis. Give me Jalen Wright. I just think he's got the opportunity and the skills needed to be a superstar in this league. Tip, you must have somebody else.
Yeah, I do. And my guy is not going to be popular by anyone's opinion. And I also want to thank somebody real quick. I want to thank Peter. Thank you for signing up to the Sports Affiliation, Peter. We really do appreciate it. But getting back to Bateman, he is ADP 218 right now. He's not on the greatest passing offense, and I know. Look, they've got Derrick Henry now, so they're probably going to pass, or they should pass a little bit less, at least less than what they did in the playoffs against the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. That was ridiculous. How are you going to have
Time
rushes?
out. I want to hear why you like him, but I got to do an aside from the expo. You're going to like this one, Matt. During the expo, Anthony, two fat guys, fantasy football, shared a room with JC and Iggy. And Anthony knows that JC hates Bateman, just hates him. Anthony went into his player cards and found 3 Rashad Bateman cards and put them next to JC's bed. Had to get that in. I love this take because I know how JC feels about Rashad Bateman. Now tell us why JC's wrong.
Well, JC's wrong because, again, this is a guy who could be your 6th, 7th wide receiver on your team. And if he hits, great. If he doesn't, get him off your team. But it's not even that. It's the Todd Monken offense. He likes to use 3 wide receivers. Last year, he had Zay Flowers, and then that's it. So at least now, I know they had Odell Beckham, but come on now. Odell Beckham has been a shell of himself for the last couple of years. I hope he does well in Miami, but he has not been the same Odell Beckham. They tried to move into the slot, but it did not work. So with Zay Flowers, that's what they'll do. And Bateman's going to be that guy who's going to be the guy getting the ball down the field. And Lamar Jackson has already shown an affinity for him in years past. But I just have this inkling with this Tide Monken offense that they are going to utilize Rashad Bateman a lot more in this game or in this year. The other thing, too, that I really like about Rashad Bateman is that last year he played 16 games. The year before that, he was injured. He was labeled as injury prone. But if you look at his numbers, you're probably going to be like, well, Tip, 32 catches, 360 yards, and one touchdown. That's not impressive. Yeah, it's not impressive. But you have no way to go but up with Rashad Bateman. And I think in this offense, as the Todd Monken offense evolves, yes, they got Derrick Henry. He's going to get the ball a ton. But that's going to now have safeties realizing, hey, we got a strong running back there. We have to make sure we play to those play action passes, RPOs. We got to make sure that we're on that. And that's where some of those trickery plays can sometimes get a player like Rashad Bateman down the field. And I think we see a bunch of chunk plays from him this year.
Okay, so we've been faster than I expected us to be, which is good.
Well, let's do a fourth one.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I prepared with a fourth one, and I know that Matt actually has an IDP guy for. So, Matt, tell us about your IDP sleeper.
This is somebody that you can take at the very end of your draft. He's probably going to go undrafted in a lot of places, but I absolutely want to be on board when he goes off, not if, but when. And it's Troy Anderson, who's a linebacker for the Falcons. He was a 2nd-round pick 2 years ago, was a reserve for that season, was a starter at the beginning of last year, but then in week 2, he tore a pec, missed the rest of the season. So we have no idea how that year was going to go. But the reason I was excited about him heading into that season is because he is a monster athlete, 4.43 40 at 243 pounds. So that's 100th percentile speed at the position at a large size. That came after a college career where he did almost literally everything. He was Big Sky Conference Freshman of the Year as a running back. The next year, their quarterback got hurt, so he stepped in at quarterback, and he made first-team all-conference as a dual-threat quarterback. Then, as a junior, he was first-team all-conference as a linebacker while also still playing some fullback. Then, as a senior, he was Big Sky Defensive Player of the Year. He put up numbers across positions, 25.5 tackles for loss throughout his college career, 8.5 sacks, 15 passes defensed, all those over just his final 2 seasons. Because again, he played offense the first half of his career. So as soon as he moved to defense, put up big numbers, blew up the combine, became a starter heading into his 2nd season. It's not certain what his exact role is going to be heading into this year because the new coaching staff has said we have 3 starters in there between him, Caden Ellis, and Nate Landman, who filled in for Troy Anderson last year. So I'm waiting to see exactly what the snap share is going to be. But if Troy Anderson is getting full playing time, I think he's got upside into the top 12 among fantasy linebackers. So I'm going to definitely stash him at the end of every single IDP draft and see what happens.
Matt,
Hey.
where were you when I was doing my IDP draft on Iggy's FF7s? I needed you, man. I needed you. I was
He was
struggling.
at Draft Sharks, buddy. He was at Draft Sharks.
I was struggling. Like I was going through and I was like looking at players and, you know, doing like research because you get 8 hours per pick. So I was actually doing some research on a lot of players in that time period. If it would have been 2 minutes, I would have been just completely screwed.
Well, lucky for you and anybody else who's struggling, my IDP strategy guide went up at the beginning of this week. So all you'd have to do now is head over there and check that out.
How much is
awesome.
It's a free read.
Oh, that's beautiful. Look at that, guys. Look
you
at that.
You can't get a
Gratis.
better price than that.
Hey, gratis. Wait, real quick, Greg. I want to talk about the Falcons. Today they got Justin Simmons, and then they got Matthew Judon yesterday. So that you may be onto something with that Atlanta Falcons defense. I mean, they're going to score points, so they're going to be on the field quite a bit. That defense, I like that call. I like that call a lot, Matt. Okay, go ahead, Greg.
No, Matt. Is he going to start, in your opinion?
I hope so, but I mean, obviously that's up to coaches. When they say there are 3 starters, I think they'll probably find playing time for them. I think it also means that they're still evaluating exactly who's going to be on the field and how much. But I mean, the guy's speedy. He showed his ability in coverage and coming forward in college. I mean, it seems to me like they should wind up having Troy Anderson in a full-time role and Nate Landman as a backup.
Sounds good to me. I don't know if Iggy's in the background. I know JC is, but if Iggy's in the background, I'm going to bring him on a little bit later and see if he has some comments, because Iggy's participated in the Kings Classic IDP the last 2 years. So I know he knows a lot more about IDP than I do. My honorable mention, bonus sleeper, is another running back. Go figure. And I actually, on the RotoWire Podathon today, this guy was being put down a little bit, and I still think they're too early on this. I think Kamani Vidal is going to end up getting the starting job in San Diego. Now, my reasoning, okay, he's 5'8", 210, 215, I think. 215. He ran a 4.46 40 3-cone. 701 is better than the 3-cone that Melvin Gordon ran and Derrick Henry ran. Now, Derrick Henry, 245-pound back, that's okay. You should be better at 3-cone than a 245-pound back. His 20-yard shuttle, 415, better than Christian McCaffrey and Derrick Henry. In front of him, you got a 29-year-old who has never exceeded 850 yards rushing. That's Gus Johnson. He's exceeded 6 rushing touchdowns one time in his career, and that was last year when he got 13. This is Gus the Bus. And he's never had 200 carries in a season, okay? I just don't see Gus Edwards as a primary ball carrier in anybody's offense. He's more of a spot player, and he's been efficient at it. But again, he's 29 years old, and he's done most of his work between the tackles. He does not catch the ball at all. Kamani Vidal does that. Let's see. J.K. Dobbins. Sorry. Hadn't played in 3 years, really. Missed 42 games over the last 3 years. And he's the knee doesn't bother me. I think he's had 2 ACL surgeries. That doesn't bother me because players come back from ACLs all the time now. But I've never heard of a player that came back and was excellent after tearing an Achilles. And he tore his Achilles last year. So I am not expecting anything from J.K. Dobbins. So to me, Kamani Vidal is the one that's going to end up in that starting role. And college, 2,793 rushing yards, 341 receiving yards on 44 receptions, 28 total TDs. Guy knows how to score. He knows how to catch the ball. He can run. He's got a little wiggle. I just think I love this kid, Kamani Vidal, and we'll see if being a small school kid, Troy, hurts him or not. But he's the guy that I think has the most upside, and Harbaugh will do what it takes to win. That's Jim Harbaugh as the ball coach. Tip, you got an extra one, right?
Oh, yeah. I got it one. It is Johnny Wilson of the Philadelphia Eagles. Look, I've been talking about this guy for a couple weeks now. I'm going to continue to talk about him. 6'7", 235. Look, he is on a high-powered offense, so you know that he's on an offense where they got to worry about A.J. Brown. They've got to worry about Devonta Smith. They got Dallas Goedert and that guy out of the backfield, Saquon Barkley, in this new revamped offense with Kellen Moore. I'm really high on this offense, and if he is actually going to supplant himself as the number 3 wide receiver on this team, I got to tell you, if one of those guys goes down that I just mentioned that are pass catchers on the Philadelphia Eagles starter team, and you put him in there, I think that he makes some noise this year, just off of his sheer just large guy, just a large bodied individual. And then not only that, I was watching the preseason game, and on the scoring drive where Shipley scored, he made a really key block. Johnny Wilson did. And he's the type of guy, I understand he plays wide receiver, but he's 6'7". He can get down and dirty in the trenches, so to speak, because of his size. And he's a strong guy, and he was the one who helped catapult that Will Shipley free for that touchdown. So I am really big on Johnny Wilson. He is showing up in camp. The coaches are talking about him. Jalen Hurts is talking about him. If he gets into that slot role, I understand that Devonta Smith also might deal a little bit in the slot, but I'm not even worried about him because, look, you also have A.J. Brown there too. But if one of these guys gets banged up, and right now Johnny Wilson is one of those players in fantasy football where you can get off the waiver wire. He started to get a little bit of run. He didn't really impress as much in preseason. He had 1 catch for 7 yards last week, but that block showed me something. That showed me he wants to stay on the field and he's going to do whatever it takes. I know sometimes whatever it takes doesn't get you fantasy football points, but you want the guy on the field. So I'll take my chances with Johnny Wilson, and he could be my number 7, number 8 wide receiver, depending, again, how deep I go on wide receiver. But I love what he could do for this offense.
Yeah, a 6'7", 230 guy in the slot, I would think he would be more of an X type receiver, because how do you jam a guy that big? I think
and that's what he did, Greg, in Florida State. He was just so much bigger than everybody. Like he would just bully him. I mean, he would bully the safeties and the linebackers. He would bully them too because he was just as big. Usually those guys in the slot could run by the linebackers, but he was running right into them and just taking their lunch. It was crazy.
I think I told you before, I could easily, if Goddard goes down, see him converting to tight end.
Yeah.
At that size. I don't know if he can block well enough to be a tight end, but he's got the size of one anyway. Matt, thank you so much for coming on. We're going to get you out of here a little bit early tonight so that we can talk FF Expo, because Tipp has just been on the moon ever since he went. It was his first expo, his first chance to, you should have seen it. Tipp did a Twitter space with Bob Harris last year, a weekly show with Bob. Bob's a Hall of Famer, and Tipp was doing a weekly show. And so when he first saw Bob, eyes lit up, kid in the candy store. I mean, you can use any saying you want. It would be accurate. Tipp was so excited. So, Matt, but first, tell us where your work is, what you got coming out, and please, again, repeat that about your draft guide that's available for free.
Oh, yeah. DraftSharks.com. You can find it all. My IDP draft strategy guide is up. We've got those for other positions as well. We've got draft guide articles for a bunch of different formats, 10-team, 12-team, 14-team. We added an 8-team this year. We cover the different scoring formats for that. So really, we try to...
There's a strategy for an 8-team? I thought you just loaded up.
Oh, I mean, that's a big part of it, but you got to know how to get an edge on the people in that league if that's the size you're playing. And so, I mean, we started out doing these 10, 12, and 14, and then somebody's like, hey, can you guys do this for 8 teams? We're like, yeah, sure, why not? We'll hit your format as well. And really, no matter how many formats we do, somebody's like, hey, can you do that for my Superflex 11-team league that has 3 flexes and also only grandparents playing? They're like, I don't know if we're going to get to that one this year, but we'll see.
Oh my God. Matt, how long you been doing this?
I've been writing since 2002. I've been full-time since it's probably been about 15, 16 years now.
So you're
Wow.
living the dream. Where are you at,
Awesome.
buddy?
I'm up in Rochester, New York.
Oh God, more New Yorkers.
Hey, what? I want to just say one thing that I really love about what Draft Sharks does is they have that injury report, or that, and it shows like it'll show like I guess like a diagram of the body
Mhm.
of that person, and it'll show where their injuries have been, and it'll label them 1, 2, 3, and then it'll say, are they a low risk, medium risk, or high risk? That is some of the coolest technology and coolest things that you guys have done, and I wanted to give you like big shout outs at Draft Sharks for doing that, man. That is cool. That is really
Yeah,
cool.
thank you very much. Fortunately, they don't need me to run those algorithms because I don't know how to do that stuff. But there's definitely a lot of numbers behind it projecting those injury risks. So I agree, it's a cool thing that we have available.
So, guys, get over to and gals, get over to Draft Sharks. Get to know Matt. He's really one of the good guys in this industry, and it's an industry full of good guys. But Matt, thank you very much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Hey,
Man.
thank you, Greg, for the kind words. Thank you guys for having me on. I appreciate it, and I enjoyed talking with you.
All right,
Awesome.
we'll get you on during the season too.
Yeah, good luck finding me at that point when I'm in the cave.
Oh, I know, I do. All right, JC, let Matt go, and we're going to talk FF Expo. And if you can put Tip, yeah, that's what I want. Tip and I full screen. Tip, all right, you rolled in on Friday, right? And all we really had on Friday was poker day on Friday. No.
Yeah, it was poker. It was poker tournament when you were picking me up from the airport.
Yeah,
and then we had the
tournament.
yeah,
Yeah,
and then we had the party at the park over there by Jersey's.
Centennial Park. Yeah,
Centennial Park. There it is.
and
Yeah.
Tip and I are eating there. I'm not real thrilled with the food, but there's a couple Eagles fans next to us, 3 guys, and 2 of them agreed for an interview. And it was one of them was a Browns fan, and then you had 2
Yeah,
Eagles
he
fans
was.
sitting with a Browns fan. The people are just so friendly. Now, did you find anybody, a single person, that wouldn't talk to you?
Not one. I mean, everybody was coming up talking that I went up and talked to was ready, willing, like no problem. They were talking about something that they love, and it's football, and fantasy football at that. And it was just an experience, Greg, that I couldn't explain. There were a lot of moments where I was just in shock and awe. And Greg told me about how awesome it is, and how the positivity and everything. Everybody loves one another, and it's just we're talking fantasy football, and or you're just talking about whatever. And I mean, I'll give you guys a quick story, and there's a ton of them, but I'll give you guys a quick story. I walk into the lobby. I got this big suitcase that Greg is like, Tip, why do you have such a big suitcase? And
3 days.
I was like, Greg, I got some shoes in here too, and I got some, I got a couple of articles of change of clothing. I don't know how the weather's gonna be. I got a couple jackets and stuff. So anyway, so I had a big suitcase. So I walk into the lobby and I turn, I see the table, and I look a little bit further down. I'm like, okay, feeling the room a little bit. Oh, some people over there drinking. That's cool. Got to meet Gary Davenport, and that was awesome. And Jorge Martin. Shout out to the Cookout Group. I got to meet him, and that was awesome. When we sat there and talked about Brock Bowers and some other things for a little bit, and then I keep walking around the bar area, and I still got my suitcase in my hand. I have not gone to the room. So I'm still walking around the bar, and I see other people, and all of a sudden I see Bob Harris. And I go into just complete fanboy mode. Like I'm like, oh my God, that's Bob Harris. Like I've still got the suitcase. And he's talking to Wendy early, and I'm like, obviously I'm gonna wait my turn. Wendy, that's her bestie. Let me wait my turn. Although I think
BFF. Wait a
I
minute.
think I think Greg, great.
BFF. Wendy is
BFF.
the BFF. Yeah.
Okay, BFF. So anyway, so I go there and I see Bob. He's gracious. He's like, Tip, how are you? And he just has such inflection in his voice, in his personality. And I still got my bag. I'm in my suitcase. And I'm walking around the bar still because I'm just talking to everybody. And I see Coop. I see Coop. Coop's tall, man. A lot of people are tall. I'm tripping out. Like, I'm like 5'10" on a good day. And I'm not a short guy, but I'm not tall. But man, Coop was like 6'3". Pat Fitzmaurice is like 6'2", 6'3" as well.
Six
I mean,
one.
6'1". Like these guys are like tall, and I'm like, man, I'm over here thinking like they're gonna be like 5'8", 5'6", like little short guys, and these guys are tall. And then I see Pat Fitzmaurice because he's towering over by everybody, and then I see Debro, and man, another moment just came over me. I saw Derek Brown. Look, Derek Brown's been on the show. So is Pat Fitzmaurice, and they couldn't have been the nicest guys, man. They were just so.
They had their whole
down.
team there. Ryan was there.
Yeah, Ryan
Andrew
Wormley
was there.
I love Ryan Wormley, man. He has got such a positive spirit, and just his vibes are really everybody's vibes are really good. But I was really vibing on all the people that I was meeting and just talking to. And then we meet Joe Bryant, and I'm just like, wow, this is
fanboy again.
This is something else right here. And I didn't even talk to you guys. I met Jagger May and Doug Kluge on the plane. They were on the plane. So we were sitting there talking for a little bit, and I was just trying to get myself prepared. But man, it was awesome. We walked down to get my bag. They were amazing. Shout out to the whole Football Guys staff, man. They were great. And but yeah, I talked to Joe Bryant, and it was just like he was just like down to earth, just talking to me and hanging out, and just a really, really, really nice guy. And okay, so then I finally get my bag up there about 2 hours later, and I didn't have I couldn't rest. I was already on like 2 hours of sleep, 3 hours of sleep at that point, because I couldn't sleep the night before either. So it's like I was just in awe of everybody. The whole love in there was overwhelming at times, not in a bad way, but just like a good overwhelming. I cried a couple times. I cried once at the Football Hall of Fame, and then I cried again on Sunday. I think because Sunday night, because everything was coming to an end, and I knew it. And I looked at my watch, and I'm like, oh my God, it's 12:30. It's coming to an end. But I mean, just so uplifting, so enlightening, so just a loving spirit everywhere there. I am very enthusiastic about the fantasy football industry. I started playing in 2005. And can you hear me, Greg?
I hear you fine.
Okay, sorry. The little green light went out. So I'm just very passionate about the fantasy football community, and to see and be with other people who are just as passionate as I am. It was amazing. It was overwhelming. It was beautiful. I know I've talked probably about 10 minutes because I could talk another 30 minutes about it. But I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, Greg, first of all, for, allowing me to, stay in the same room, in a different bed, in the same room with you, man. Because
you shared that bed with Anthony. Different nights. Anthony stayed Thursday night.
But I appreciate you, man, because there was a point that I didn't really think I was going to be able to go. And I was really bummed out. I was really bummed. I just, had some things happen personally that I just was like, man, I can't get it going. And so I was just like, any way necessary, I got to get there. And then Greg was like, hey, buddy, I got a room for you. I got a bed. If you want to, I got a bed. And I was just like, all right, let me try to figure some things out. I worked I'm going to say it. I know. I'm going to say it. No. Look, okay, I worked my tail off, but it was the A word. I worked it off to get there.
A word, you mean ass?
Yeah. I was going to say it, but you kept inflecting. You kept saying, you kept it.
Saying it from yourself, my friend.
Okay, all right.
From yourself.
All right. But yeah, I was on there just like, wow. I went and put blinders on and just worked. Wait
a minute. Okay.
To get there.
We're getting close to the time to shut down, and I do want to get in. Tip has invited a very special guest for next week.
Oh, yes.
But I want to get to the story about what you learned when you went into the Hall of Fame about the Raiders. But let's let's pump up our guest for next
Okay.
week first.
Yes.
And then we'll come back to the story. Who do we got next week,
So
Tip?
next week we have Marcus Grant coming on
But-
from NFL Network. Oh, go ahead.
But we've got to do it an hour early because he's a busy guy.
Yes, yeah, we're gonna do it an hour earlier, but we have Marcus Grant coming on. Guys, you know Marcus Grant. He was at the Fantasy Football Expo. Very awesome.
Who's
to
cooler,
hang out with him.
Jagger or Marcus?
Oh man, you know Jagger has like a more party cool.
He's a vibe. He's a vibe guy.
But I will say Marcus has got this chill, like laid back California kid. Like I feel it from him. But yeah, so that's gonna be an hour early. Instead of it being at 6 p.m. Central, it's gonna be 5 p.m. Central. And then the Hall of Fame. So what I did learn was the Raiders had 4 consecutive years that they had an inductee get into the Hall of Fame. And those years I had it written down. It's because I wanted to write an article.
88, 89.
It was 87, 88, 89, and 90. They had a Raider go into the Hall of Fame in consecutive years. So back to back to back to back. And when I saw that, I was floored.
Little girl Tip was in tears.
I cried. I did cry. I cried at that moment. I cried at the locker room experience as well. That was very moving. But yeah, you know what? Again, if you haven't been out to the expo, I can now say it. I've been, and it is truly, truly, truly amazing. It is awe-inspiring.
Dan and Justin from SiriusXM interviewed me, which amazed me. But we talked about my Kings Classic auction because I got stuck with Pat Mahomes. What do you mean got stuck? I had already taken Josh Allen for $20. Then I got Isaiah Pacheco, who I was happy with. And then I said, well, I got these dildos next to me, Pianowski and Fitzmaurice, aren't bidding on anybody. Everybody's putting up these second-tier players to try to draw some money out. I'm going to put up a star that I know is going to draw some money out, and that way maybe one of these two guys will get off their $200 budget because I'm sitting at 180 now after I got Allen. Actually lower than that because I got Pacheco, I think, for 22 as well. So I put up Pat Mahomes for 15, knowing damn well somebody's going to bid on him. Nobody bid on him. Nobody bid on him. So now I've got the number 1 and number 2 projected quarterbacks. Sirius wanted to know how that happened. Well, wait a minute. Dennis Clausen took 4 freaking tight ends in his first 5 players. Okay. And I'm the interesting one, but Justin and Dan, thank you very much for having me on. It was a blast. And Tip took pictures of it. So I actually have pictures of me sitting at the Sirius table with the headphones on, talking to Dan and Justin from SiriusXM. And my God, what an experience, man. It was, you talk about Kid in the Candy Store. That's me every year. It really is. I just hide it better than he did.
I couldn't hide it. I'm bad at that.
So are you going again next year?
Absolutely. It's no question. I've got to make it there every year. I've told my girlfriend, I said, look, don't play with me. Don't schedule anything on the second weekend of August. Don't play with me. Yeah,
and you might bring Alana with you. You said you might.
Absolutely, man. I would love. She would love the experience. You know, she likes football. She's not necessarily big into it, but she likes to watch it. So she would love it.
And it is an expensive thing if you stay at the hotel and you get the rental car and all that stuff. You can share a ride. I got at the airport early on Thursday, 11 o'clock. And we came in a couple minutes early. And Iggy was coming in, and Iggy got delayed. So I ended up waiting till like 3 o'clock for Iggy. Well, while I'm waiting, Scott Fish reaches out to me and says, can you give Sal Lito a ride? Now, those that don't know, Sal is a New York City boy. Now, Long Island and Brooklyn. Grew up in Brooklyn, lives on Long Island now, I think, or vice versa. Who knows? It's all New York to me. Anyway, Sal runs the Fantasy Cares Potathon, which is like 3 straight days of fantasy, 24 hours a day. It's pretty amazing. So Sal's riding down with Iggy and I, and Oh, we're just cutting up. True story. I went to draft night out before I went to pick up Tip here at the airport. I had to drive back up to Cleveland for him. He owes me forever for that.
Yeah.
Anyway, Sal is in. He's not playing poker, but he's there. He's kind of, and he's got the. I don't know if you've seen the Scott Fishbowl shirts, but he's got the Warner Brothers one, and I love that. It's a Warner Brothers logo with SFB in the middle of it, and I shout out across the room, "I want that shirt!" And I'm joking. He's smaller than I am. He wears a large. I wear a 2X. He says, "Okay, I'll take it back to the hotel and I'll wash it and I'll get it to you." And he was dead serious. And I said, "No, Sal, I just want the shirt, not your shirt. I don't want the shirt off." He was willing to give me the shirt off his back. That's the kind of people we have there. And for those that don't know, Fantasy Cares is looking to raise $500,000 for charity this year. Most of it for Toys for Tots. So kids that don't have the opportunity to get Christmas presents can get some Christmas presents. Go to fantasycares.org. They have some videos up. Look at their shopping spree videos. They filled up a freaking truck, a U-Haul truck with toys for kids from last year. And they didn't make $500,000 last year. They made $260-some thousand. Still pretty damn good. And that's all because of Scott Fish. And Scott's there. You met Scott, right?
Oh, yeah. No, I did.
What's your opinion of Scott?
He's amazing. Scott is a busy,
follically challenged.
Follically challenged, yeah, that's for sure. But I would say he's busy. He's always running around doing something. It's so awesome to see him.
Yeah, and now JC got us some shirts. I'll say this: if you're a fan of the Expo and you like what the TSA is doing, JC created a logo T-shirt that has the TSA logo on it with FF Expo 2024. Now, I think he should have taken about 100 of those because I think he could have sold out at the Expo because a lot of people there loved them. If you want that shirt, you reach out to JC. He's going to set up a merchandise shop and he will order you one of those shirts. Now, it's going to cost you, but he's pretty fair in the price. And I don't know what it's going to be. I'd guess around $20, which isn't too bad for a logo T-shirt from the FF Expo. Anyway, we got to wrap up because there's a watch party tonight. I don't have the link to it, but go to tsa.org. There's going to be a watch party for the game tonight. And earlier, I think the game's already kicked off and I'm missing it. So I got to get out of here so I can go watch some preseason football. How about you, Tip?
Yeah, no, I'm headed to watch it as well. And I'm just excited that football's here.
And who do we have again next week?
Marcus Grant, an hour earlier at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. Check it out on the Sports Affiliation. We will remind you, though. Don't worry about that.
Okay, and thank you to everybody that comes and watches our show, whether it's live, where you can chat with us like Mr. Scampers is doing, and Mike from Surf Football was in earlier. I saw him. Mike was also, I got to interview Mike at the Expo.
Me too. Yeah, no,
I got a picture of Mike and his wife with me. So I'm doing a video on the Expo, so everybody will be able to see it. But, man, it's taken me forever to put it together because I got so much content. And, oh, man. Anyway, JC, take us out.